Hi, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. My name is Justin Leslie, and I'm starting this podcast and calling it By All Means with Justin Leslie under the channel name Just Integrity Network, where I will look to use the channel name Just Integrity Network to continue to further my mission of truth telling and truth seeking and looking to become an advocate for other whistleblowers and truth tellers in this movement of unlearning and awakening. The mission we are co-creating is to foster a community grounded in integrity, transparency, and authenticity. In this podcast, we will dive deep into the principles that shape our lives, professions, and societies. Through candid conversations, thought-provoking interviews, and insightful discussions, we aim to explore the multifaceted nature of integrity in every aspect of life. Our goal is to inspire and empower our listeners to live and lead with integrity, embracing honesty and accountability as foundational values. By sharing diverse perspectives and real life experiences, we strive to create a platform where ethical practices and genuine human connections thrive. Join us on this journey to uphold and celebrate integrity in all its forms. And together, let's create a positive impact as we build the systems of the new free world. If you'd like to work with me on this mission and become a sponsor or an affiliate to the show, please reach out to me at business@justintegrity.net. And my website is just that, justintegrity.net. Now, for those who have not heard of me or don't exactly know who I am a 26-year-old young man who has been through quite a bit of a roller coaster journey, we'll put it at that, since we'll say 2020, or definitely December of 2020 is when a lot of this was really starting, but even before that. Um, my educational background stems in pharmaceutical and biomedical sciences, where I graduated cum laude from the University of Rhode Island in Kingston, Rhode Island, where I went to the College of Pharmacy there and studied pharmaceutical biomedical sciences. The reasoning behind me wanting to even study pharmaceuticals and biomedical sciences was due to my, we'll put in quotations, diagnosis of this multi-system disorder that I was given the name of tuberous sclerosis complex, or TSC for short, at a rather, it's actually an old age for most diagnoses. But at the young age of 10, I was given this disease with this really long name and was told that you will never have a normal life ever again, that you are at risk of epilepsy and you have potential risk of being on the autism spectrum, where 90% of people with this diagnosis have 90% chance of having epilepsy and about 40 to 60% have autism. I ultimately was given the diagnosis of a mild version of this disorder. I knew that I was rather different than my classmates growing up in school. I have some skin lesions on my body that, from my understanding now, are just forms of detox and symptoms of showing some form of toxicity. Did I know that at the time? Absolutely not. So the reason I got into pharmaceutical and biomedical sciences was stemming from being given this disease with this really long name and wanting to help humanity, especially in the rare diseases area, and being that spearhead to finally come up with a cure in the pharmaceutical industry, because pharmaceuticals have never actually cured anybody from anything. They just mask symptoms. So on that point, I say that 99% of allopathic medicine itself is based on fraud, and the only reasoning behind allopathic medicine and the use for it is acute trauma care, where if you get into a massive car accident, then absolutely get an emergency surgery to save your life. But we will get into this topic and discussion about this with future guests, and I will touch on this myself quite often. So after graduating from the University of Rhode Island in during the SARS-CoV-2 pandemic outbreak, where I graduated cum laude from University of Rhode Island, I couldn't find a job out of college. And so I started studying for the graduate record exam, or the GRE, and got accepted at the New Brunswick campus for a biomedical science master's degree at Rutgers University. Long story short about Rutgers is I spent one whole semester there, and then I did a part-time semester there, which leads me into getting to work at Pfizer. But to backtrack, while at Rutgers, I was very much awakening, we'll put that in quotations, awakening and waking up to all of the fraud that the allopathic medicine industry as a whole is really based on, getting into the Rockefeller Foundation and the oil giants essentially buying out the holistic medicine industry, buying all the textbooks, and really blackmailing the industry as a whole, saying we'll bankrupt you if you don't comply with us. And so I really woke up to all of allopathic medicine being fraudulent really early on in my career, before I even took a job in the pharmaceutical industry. So it was really hard to participate in a master's program, to continue to dig a hole for myself of debt and of just a moral hole, essentially, of going down a path that I was not necessarily fit for or was going to agree with for the rest of my life. So during this master's program, I wrote a paper called SARS-CoV-2 Uncovered, and a lot of it is based off of Plandemic 2, which is a documentary created by Mickey Willis, where it dives deep into the plandemic, or scamdemic that I call it, of SARS-CoV-2 and the trauma that was really forced on us as a society. After I wrote this paper, I knew that I had to do something else rather than be a full-time master's student and just continue to slave myself away in a master's program that I was just completely miserable in. So that's where I was applying to pharmaceutical and biomedical companies, biotech companies around my area, to see if I could find a job to even just use my undergraduate skills for a certain amount of time, just to figure out if this was going to be something that I was going to be happy with for the rest of my life. So I applied to 4 companies. One of them ended up being a contract offer with Pfizer Incorporated, and that role was a formulation analytical scientist working directly on the SARS-CoV-2 mRNA Pfizer and BioNTech vaccine, which is an experimental injection that was approved by emergency use authorization. And I was offered this role in March of 2021, after the vaccines were already being rolled out. When I was given this job offer, I really was not sure if I even wanted to take it. You know, I was faced with a moral and ethical dilemma of, do I take this job where I know that this vaccine is essentially a toxic poison bomb and causing harm on the masses? And essentially God, the little voice inside my head said, Justin, you are being presented with an opportunity to do something really powerful for the rest of the world and cause ripples, which will inevitably cause waves across this earth. And so I made a promise to not stay on the sidelines if I was going to participate in what I essentially saw as genocide with this vaccine rollout and Operation Warp Speed and how quickly these vaccines were pushed on the masses. During my time at Pfizer, I became increasingly concerned about the ethical implications of this vaccine rollout, and my critical thinking and commitment to the public and the welfare of public and the world compelled me to reach out to Project Veritas, a alternative media group with the CEO, James O'Keefe, who is known for being a muckraker and a world famous investigative journalist. I collaborated with Project Veritas for roughly 3 months on the inside of my time at Pfizer. I started working directly with them in around October, and I stopped working with them in early December, going undercover essentially with Project Veritas. Despite this significant personal risk in doing some things that were rather dangerous, my efforts culminated in not having my story be released and my story essentially being spiked by James O'Keefe and Project Veritas and being offered a job opportunity during this crucial time for the fate of humanity. Since I was offered a job and was not given the opportunity to blow the whistle on information that the public had the right to know, and since I was very naive and gave all this information to Project Veritas and did not back any of it up myself, how foolish could I have been? Well, I was extremely foolish and trustworthy of them. But I saw this job offer as an opportunity essentially to go look at Project Veritas through a lens that nobody else really would, considering that they were the only group that came across as truth tellers and truth seekers in the media in general, but especially the alternative media. Like, there was no way I was going to CNN or Fox News or MSNBC with the information that I was presenting to them. It in my mind essentially had to be Project Veritas. So the fact that they didn't tell my story was a huge red flag in my mind, because their motto is be brave, do something, and I was certainly being brave and doing something. So I took this job opportunity as an undercover agent or journalist at Project Veritas, where I worked for a little under a year when I resigned from Pfizer in April of 2022, and I soon after joined Project Veritas, and I essentially was recruited to work at PV by James and the team that I was working with, because they saw the undercover work that I was doing on the inside of Pfizer and thought, hey, we can use you. You're pretty good at this, and it won't take that much to train you. So what do you say? So I took that offer, and it took me about 6 or 7 months to get trained in undercover journalism, because it's not the easiest thing in the world. Absolutely, I mean, it's much easier to go around saying, "Oh, my name's Justin, and I'm vaccinated and boosted," versus going around with an alias and coming up with a complete character name and whole backstory when you sit down in front of somebody and you essentially have to lie and lie and lie. That's something I wasn't necessarily comfortable with, was just lying, 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 which is why I stand in integrity today. During my time at Project Veritas, I got the biggest story in Project Veritas history, the Pfizer directed evolution, or Pfizer is mutating COVID story, on how Jordan Tristan Walker, who is the director of mRNA scientific planning, explained to me while undercover, who I also had no affiliation with while working at Pfizer. He had no idea I worked at Pfizer, and explained to me that Pfizer is mutating COVID. Well, this is where we get into a potentially controversial subject of the terrain model versus the germ model of germ theory, where it hasn't been proven that viruses have been isolated or purified and exist and are what actually make people like you and I sick, which is the most important part of the conversation. Is I'm not saying that people don't get sick, but I'm saying that we've been lied to about what makes us sick. It's not this invisible enemy that flies around and hops from person to person and just magically makes you sick and get a stomach bug. This is an extremely complex subject, and we call it the terrain camp, or the terrain family. The people in the terrain telling mission don't have all the answers, which is okay, but we can also affirm that we are being lied to about these so-called viruses. And if you disagree with me, that is perfectly fine. I got there. It took me several years to get there, but if you're not fully there, I encourage you to continue to listen, as it's okay. I am open to questions and having conversation about this, and would love to help you understand and get there that viruses do not exist, and that you can step into your own and really take control of your health. I went to O'Keefe Media Group after the Project Veritas board and James O'Keefe had massive disagreements, which I ultimately look at as somewhat of a charade, but I will not touch too much on that, other than it felt like a charade. But I went to go to O'Keefe Media Group to essentially have access to James O'Keefe to continue to corroborate my story, my Pfizer whistleblower story, which I did. The Pfizer directed evolution story itself created an opportunity for me, even though I didn't necessarily agree with this story, as I saw it more as dangerous to the world than good for the world. It provided me an opportunity to rapport build with Project Veritas and the rest of my colleagues, and eventually the colleagues that I was at with O'Keefe Media Group, where I was able to corroborate my Pfizer whistleblower story as best that I could. And that entailed reobtaining insider footage from when I was working as a whistleblower at Pfizer with Project Veritas. All of this information that I reobtained is in volume 2 of my documentary called Project Whistleblower, which I am a co-producer of, that I released in March of 2023. My work as a whistleblower has garnered international attention, where I've done interviews in the United States, Canada, China, and am looking to continue to remain international, and do as many interviews as I can possibly do. And my revelations have received millions of views online, sparking significant public discourse on the integrity of Big Pharma as a whole. My story is unique not only because of the scale of this whistleblowing, but because I've courageously had to expose malpractices within not only big pharma, but within the alternative media, and how there have been some deceptive practices used essentially to keep me silenced. For example, during the time that I was obtaining information for Project Veritas, I had done a microscope expose with Dr. Carrie Madej, who is a world-renowned whistleblower doctor who has spoken about the COVID-19 vaccine and how it is dangerous and how she's looked at these things under a microscope. Well, I was the source that provided her the Pfizer vials, and we worked with Project Veritas on exposing this massive corruption on what was under the microscope. And it ultimately was spiked by Project Veritas. It led nowhere, but she went on Stu Peters' show 4 days after this expose occurred, and she was giving foresight as to what was to come. And what was to come was absolutely nothing. And a week and a half after that, there was an FBI raid that essentially was used to silence me, from my perspective at least, as it was a massive excuse to not release this story. It's pretty crazy being a double whistleblower. It was a rare position that I was in, and it underscores unwavering commitment to truth and accountability for holding people accountable that it's hard to hold people accountable for, because they come across as heroes and truth tellers and people that are saving you. But the truth is that there is a lot of deception out there in this world. In addition to my investigative work, I also included other whistleblowers in my Project Whistleblower documentary by the names of Kim Witzak and Raymond Bouchard. Kim is an FDA whistleblower, where she had a massive story back in 2016, and is also connected to Pfizer, where she was whistleblowing on Zoloft, which is a smoking cessation drug, where she was actually removed from her consumer representative board position during this black box warning removal vote, which is the first of its kind, and I believe it's the last time that that ever happened either. Pfizer took advantage of this situation and ultimately removed her off the board and made, I believe, millions, if not just under $1 billion in like 2 years off of this opportunity. And Raymond also had an amazing story where he sat down with James and did an interview, and brings attention to child endangerment on Twitter, where if you change the search settings on Twitter, you can essentially find an open search forum. And if you put certain hashtags that I will not necessarily highlight on this episode, but we'll get into this potentially in later episodes, if slash when Raymond joins me on By All Means. But it's a really long story, and it was a lot of weight on my shoulders to not have this amazing story told when all the evidence was right in front of our faces. But James was not willing to release that due to potential optics around his relationship with Elon Musk, as well as I just thought it was really odd that all of this evidence was right in front of his face, and he's also willing to release a Pfizer story based off of a word of mouth scenario from Jordan Tristan Walker saying, "Oh, I'm mutating COVID," and then when asked for comment, he said, "I'm literally a liar." Go figure. In addition to my investigative work, I am the founder of Just Integrity Network, and this is an initiative aimed at merging together investigative journalism and research with holistic wellness advocacy and really getting to the root of health and why we are here on this earth plane in this realm. Through this platform, I promote critical thinking, transparency, and the importance of holistic health practices. My personal commitment to health is evident in my lifestyle, which includes weightlifting, snowboarding, hiking with my dog and family, holistic therapies, and a consistent nutritional diet with the occasional cheat meal, although I don't necessarily advocate for that. I'm just, I'm being honest, folks. I was also really looking forward to connecting with a community and creating a mission. So if you are interested in joining me, please go to my website at justintegrity.net and join my email list at the bottom of the page. And I have been invited actually to numerous speaking events already, including Confluence, Music and Sky, and Santa Monica Earth Day Fest, where I've shared my insights and experiences as a whistleblower with audiences firsthand. My work has been featured in various media outlets and podcasts, further establishing my role as a leading voice in public health advocacy. My blend of scientific expertise, ethical commitment, and public advocacy makes me hopefully a thought leader for the future. My unique experiences and insights offer a profound understanding of the complexities and ethical considerations in pharmaceutical sciences and public health. Thank you for listening to my first episode. I appreciate you guys. Hopefully it wasn't that long of one for you. And I really appreciate if you guys can share this episode and just continue to share my documentary, Project Whistleblower, at justintegrity.net, as that means the world to me. And I look forward to staying in touch with my audience and working with you all in garnering a strong community that will be able to withstand the darkness and show how great the light truly is. Much love to you all. Thanks again. Justin signing off for now, and stay tuned for future episodes.